Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start today's meeting. Welcome to Economy, Infrastructure and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Today's date is Thursday the 26th of September and the time is 10 o'clock. Please make sure your mobile phones are switched off and you've pressed F1 on your laptops, please. We'll move straight into item 1, which is apologies. Debs.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Mark Deville, Cabinet Member.
Chairman, can I apologise for not having my network?
Okay, somebody will help you, Bernard. We'll move straight on to item 2, declarations of interest. Have any members got anything they wish to declare? I'll take the silence as a no. Item 3 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of July. Are we all in agreement that's a true record of events? Yeah. Can I have a proposer, please? Graham Hutton. Seconder, please. Philip Hudson. And we'll move straight on to item 4, which is the Highways Transformation Programme Recovery Plan and Performance Update. And I'd like to welcome Councillors Robert Pritchard and Councillors Keith Blunder to the committee. Welcome. I don't think, Keith, you've been before. I don't think Rob has. So over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. This is the 7th update to the Committee on the Highways Transformation Programme. And today's update focuses on the additional recovery plan that has been built into the programme over the summer to help fix more roads and to enable the changes that have been made to some of the delivery milestones within the original transformation programme. Since the introduction of our recovery plan, we've seen a 20% increase in the amount of defects repaired compared to this time last year. As well as fixing more roads, we're also seeing other improvements, where it be an increase in the size of patches being repaired, meaning we have more repairs first time, and the number of gullies being emptied each week, and our inspection response times. All that extra capacity is having a positive impact on our efficiency and productivity. Our contractors have brought in new proposals to the table, including securing the accelerator of over 100 roads of preventative maintenance treatments from 25 to 24. And that represents excellent value for the taxpayer. We have some great innovation in place, including different operational machinery, new surface materials, and AI condition survey capability. On top of this, we have 4 new environmental maintenance teams, who have been mobilised, and they're working on priorities being set by members to help make a real visible difference. Supporting all of this operational effort, we've also introduced new communications strategy for the first time, and we have a dedicated strategy and dedicated resource to ensure we're being proactive with the communications from the authority, helping to get the message out there that we are fixing more roads. We mustn't underplay the impact last winter has had on the network. It was significant, and if we'd not taken this action plan and put this recovery plan into place, we would find ourselves in a much more difficult situation. However, prioritising the recovery plan has meant that some other non-operational parts of the transformation programme have been delayed slightly and will just take slightly longer to come on board. The good news is we're also taking the opportunity to better coordinate those improvements with the workforce, along with training and development activity to maximise those benefits. In summary, the transformation programme has come a long way. We're continuing to make good progress whilst also doing a lot more work on the ground, which is where it matters the most to the public. I'm going to hand over to officers, James and David, who have a slide deck to go through for members.
Thank you, Councillor. Morning, everyone. Just for the record, I'm James Bailey, I'm Assistant Director for Highways and Infrastructure. Yes, the Highways and Transformation Programme, including the extra investment activity, a new recovery plan, is of course all aligned to the Council's corporate priority to fix more roads. Just use this slide, there we go. To complement the written report that's been submitted to committee today, we've got this series of slides to provide a bit more detail, draw a bit more detail out and support the further conversation afterwards. It's divided into these four key parts there. David Walters, who's on my left, County Council's Head of Highway Maintenance and Network Management, he'll be covering or providing an update on the Highway Recovery Plan, together with the capital maintenance programmes in a moment. And then I shall pick up and talk about the updates to the communications, which Councillor Pritchard has just made reference to, and then give an update of the wider remaining elements of the Highways Transformation Programme. So we'll get straight into the Highway Recovery Plan. I'll hand over to David.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm David Walters. So as we said, this is the 7th update to the committee on the Highway Transformation Programme since the first one in July 2022. I think it's fair to say a lot's been achieved over the last 2 years, which I'll provide a short recap of towards the end of the presentation with a summary of the remaining task and delivery milestones. I think useful just to remind ourselves, though, on the key elements of the programme, 4 key priorities, and we'll bring those out as we go through the presentation today. So, just a reminder, we said the original transformation programme included significant extra investment to improve our customer service, to repair more roads, and during 2023 we made excellent progress with that transformation and the investment, both being on track, having a very positive impact, over 30,000 pothole repairs carried out, 200,000 square metres of structural patching works, 23 major surfacing schemes and over 1.5 million square metres of preventative surface treatments. Significant increase in what we've done for a number of years and had a really positive impact on the road network during the first part of that transformation. However, if we think back, late 2023, early 24, Staffordshire was hit by 6 named storms, and we since had the wettest winter since records began in 1836. This caused significant damage to the network. We saw a 100% increase in the number of new defects being identified compared to the same period last year. The wet weather hampered the repair progress itself. Roads and defects were often underwater, meaning they couldn't be repaired or properly repaired for months, and this wiped out much of the progress that we'd made in the previous 12 months. And we saw pressure end-to-end, significant increase in customer enquiries, demand on the inspection team, repairs and both claims. What was quite an unprecedented situation was not just seen in Staffordshire, but it did require an urgent and comprehensive response. So in early May, in response to that, a proposition was made to Cabinet to readjust about 5.6 million of the existing resources and programmes to enable an in-year recovery plan with 4 main aims. Firstly, to improve our response times to repair high-risk defects. So that's our emergency, our Category 1 and our Category 2 defects, which had more than doubled in numbers since January compared to the same period in 2023. Secondly, to get back on top of the backlog of defects. Over half of the progress that we'd made in 2023 had been lost as a result of the intense damage caused by the wettest winter on record and followed by the wettest spring on record. Thirdly, to recover our drainage operational performance and get back on track with our cyclical cleansing operations. That's mainly our gully emptying activity. And of course, thinking ahead, to be able to improve our resilience and be able to respond to the threat if a similar prolonged and extreme wet winter occurs in the forthcoming winter. So in summary, Cabinet fully supported the plan, but they also committed to go further with an extra £2 million on top of the 5.6 additional capital investment, as well as additional revenue to go further and faster with both the recovery plan and to fix more roads. Looking at what that actually meant on the ground, the first and most significant element of the recovery plan was to retain extra operational resources that had originally only been intended for 23-24 financial year. That included, for example, the work stack reduction crews that we'd had in place during that year. And that allowed us to make a very early headway in the first quarter of this year. We'd actually retained those resources at risk through the foresight of the County Council's maintenance management team, who were regularly reviewing the impact of the winter on the network through both customer enquiries, claims, asset management and the inspection teams, all of which that had transferred back to the County Council in April 2022 as part of an earlier element of the transformation programme. So those 10 extra crews, together with support to retain a planer patching crew, 2 drainage crews, a sign crew, a road marking crew, funded through minor capital maintenance, is what's helped to enable that 120,000 square metres of extra patching, over 11,000 potholes and 670 drainage jobs to be completed to date. But as I've said, Cabinet asked the service to go further and faster, and the extra £2 million investment has provided up to 8 additional pothole repair crews that were mobilised during July and August, and that will continue through into the autumn until we've expended the extra investment. It's also fair to say Cabinet have been very clear it's not just about chasing run rates and work stack numbers. It's also about doing the right things in the right way to get that best balance between the productivity, between the quality and the visibility. And we are regularly reviewing that with both our Cabinet and our Cabinet support members. We also asked our delivery partner to ensure that all crews supporting the extra investment have Staffordshire County Council fixing more road signs with them being used on site. You should have seen those, and we hope you are seeing those. They won't be with all our crews, but they should certainly be with all the crews that are working on the extra investment. We also had additional revenue support on top of the capital budget that we've previously described. So there was an additional £0.8 million of revenue to support drainage activity. To date, that's included bringing in 2 extra gully emptying crews to support the delivery of the planned programme. A jetter, which has been working since, it's been working about 6 weeks now. It will continue for a few more weeks till early November. We'll pause that then and we'll bring it back in over the winter. That jetter and the crews are working on a combination of planned work and hotspots, and we've set up a drainage task and finish group to very rapidly analyse the work stack, look at what extra resources needed, engage with the supply chain, make sure the resource is identified. When it's available, make sure it's being put to the most effective use, and to manage that resource when it arrives. We'd already provided for additional reactive crews in February, March, again, before the full challenge of the winter was known, and that provided us with an equivalent of 4 months extra capacity over that period. And we're now working with the supply chain to bring in up to 2 crews to clean out ditches and drainage grips, despite the fact that most ditches on the highway verges are actually the responsibility of landowners, and we'll be looking at tackling that issue as well. The additional drainage capacity that we've seen there was provided within a few weeks of Cabinet making the investment. And as I say, the jet has been in with us since mid-August, and we're seeing some really positive results from that. We've also changed the way we use our existing gully emptying crews that are provided by Amy. We've changed those so that 4 machines now are focused on planned work, 2 are on ad hoc work, one each in the north and south of the county. And the 2 machines that are focused on this reactive work, they are informed by a risk-based matrix in line with the National Codes of Practice, but very much supplemented by the knowledge of our technical review officers managing this work on a day-to-day basis, and the community team, and of course our local member input. So the Highway Recovery Group, in conjunction with members, also agreed to some changes in operational practice that will refocus resources to ensure, for example, where roads are flooded as a result of the adjoining land being flooded, the adjoining fields being flooded, that instead of thinking of sending a gully emptier, we'll put temporary closures in place, and then we'll go back when the road's cleared, when the adjacent land is cleared, when we can effectively use the gully emptier. We've also introduced 4 environmental maintenance teams, which are outlined on the bottom of the screen. They're funded through an ongoing additional revenue support of £0.8 million. First teams are on the ground in August. They've delivered over 50 jobs to date, such as cutting back of verges, removal of debris, cutting back soft landscaped on linked footpaths, all of which are being locally identified from our community insight, member involvement, and we're getting some really positive feedback from those already. As part of the recovery plan, We also agreed with informal cabinet a range of key performance indicators, which a members board gets briefed on a weekly basis. We've shown the latest performance summarised in this table. Generally, good progress. We're seeing improved performance in our high-risk defect response time. We're just above the targets. Cat 2s have been improving. I think the latest figure they show they're back on target. But again, they are very much impacted by weather. Good example of being last weekend, and I'll give you some numbers of last weekend to show what that one weekend can have on our emergency repairs. We've seen increased defect repair run rate, and we've also seen that through the Gully programme and also our inspection response times as well. We saw slightly less potholes repaired than we would have expected in August. However, when we've looked into that, that is because we have been doing larger patches. Some of our patches have been up to 60% larger than we originally expected. Again, they're focused on doing the right thing, but the initial data that we've got through September shows that the number of potholes being repaired has significantly increased again. So I think we've probably got that balance about right now between doing the right thing, but also making sure we are starting to see an increase in the number of defects repaired. We'll continue looking at that. We'll continue focused on that data and continue to focus on improving that performance. As you can see, gully emptying, our planned programme back on track. We did just over 7,400 gullies in July against our targets of 5,000 as a base and 6,400 as a stretch, reflecting the extra crews. And I think we're about 8,000 this month as well. So again, we've seen significant improvements in productivity. Similarly, our inspection response times are back where we would expect. They've massively increased, and we're now standing at about, I think, 7 days is the latest data. That was the last full month against the targets of 24 and 20 days. Again, they're very much affected by the number of inquiries that we've seen coming in. KPI 3, which is our backlog, we are still seeing the work stack, the number of jobs in the work stack increasing slightly. That's still a reflection of the condition of the network and the impact of last winter. We do our annual safety inspections during the summer months, and then we pause them in the winter. We are still on that programme of annual inspections, and many of the new jobs that we are seeing are coming out of that. Our annual inspections generally are estate type roads or unclassified parts of the rural network. KPI 7 is we're developing a quality measure for proxy. We do collect an awful lot of information on the quality of the products that we produce, but it's very technically based. For example, a sign that's not got a sandbag on it that might blow over would be a non-compliance. So we're looking at that and how do we pull out of all that data the stuff that's really important from a customer and from a member perspective. We did have one significant quality issue in July. I think it's 1 out of 2,453 repairs, which was resolved, lessons quickly learnt and actions. I think comms were managed well around that issue. It was flagged by both our Chief Executive and the Cabinet member to the Chief Executive, Amy. And again, that supported an increased push for quality. But again, in context, 1 out of 2,453 repairs. We'll dive into it in a little bit more detail. So as can be seen on the chart, so the top of the screen, they are the month-by-month performance of our response to our high-risk defects. So that's our category 1A emergency repairs, which are 2 hours, our category 1 repairs, which are 24 hours, and our category 2 repairs, which are up to 7 days. Really useful to see the information sitting behind that, because of course that clearly has an impact upon the response time. So at the bottom of the screen, what you can see is the blue line is the equivalent number of jobs being identified in 2023, and the orange line is the number in the same month in 2024. What we can see, significantly more new defects being identified each month due to the damage caused by the winter weather, and a significant increase in the number of high-risk defects during that period, which, because of the need to respond to them in a very tight timescale, pulls resources away from the planned work so that we can react to those quickly which does have that negative effect on the productivity of the other schedule work. We've continued to do a deep dive into that, but as we said, the main cause is the general degrading of the network due to the ongoing gap between the level of investment required and the actual investment, coupled with the impact of severe weather. I was driving in this morning down a few of our unclassified rural roads, and you can just see the impact of the rain over the weekend again. It's very, very quickly causing chaos with some of our roads. Just for context, Staffordshire isn't alone in these challenges. The latest edition of the Asphalt Industry Alarm Report features responses from the majority of local highway authorities in England and Wales about the condition of roads, the budgets and the current work. 2024 edition featured responses from 72% of local authorities, including Staffordshire, and it showed the backlog of work to fix potholes across the network has now topped an estimate of £16 billion, with more than half of the local roads having less than 15 years of their structural life remaining. It's also reported that 2 million potholes were filled over the last year, up more than 40% from the previous year, equivalent to 1 every 16 seconds, but that the average frequency of resurfacing for all classes of roads across those that reported is once every 80 years. So quite significant, obviously, issues with our local road network, not just in Staffordshire. The Audit Office in 2024 released its final report into the condition and maintenance of local roads, and it concluded that there's significant gaps in the DFT's information on the condition of local roads, in effect meaning the DFT's data doesn't allow it to understand how the funding it provides for local road maintenance improves the condition of local roads. I'll come back to that in a minute later on, because some of the new survey techniques that we are now using, which will start to help to shape, and there is a consultation at the moment out from DFT on what road condition surveys should look like in the future. Turning to drainage, a bit more detail on drainage. As I've said, we topped more than 8,000 being visited in August, compared to an average of 3,835 in the period between April and June. That's both a result of the productivity gains in the core resource and the additional subcontractor crews that we've had in operation since July. It's now well above that base target, and obviously we will keep pushing that. It will change as the type of location varies that we're doing this work. For example, we will get higher levels of productivity when we're on estate-type roads compared to high-speed roads that require complex traffic management, where we will choose to spend longer to avoid the significant costs of returning back to gullies to have a second attempt at cleaning them, because of the extra costs of going back with that TM. So that will push the productivity down when we're on those roads. On the right-hand side, that's the total number of drainage jobs being completed. As you can see, in August, 337. That's very much a result of the extra capacity of the jetter. And again, that will change with the mix of jobs. That's all the drainage jobs that we're doing, whether that's dig downs, jetting, additional cleansing, etc. And again, there is a trade-off between the time that we take to spend on those before we go, actually, no, that does need a dig down. We're also looking at further improvements. When we need camera surveys at the moment, we bring in a separate crew. We've been trialling cameras being fitted to our gully emptiers so that we can use the camera in conjunction with the gully emptier doing ad hoc work. There is that trade-off again between the time that the gully emptier will then spend doing those surveys, balanced with the benefit that we get from being able to do more whilst we are there. So we'll keep a very close eye on that, but it's just a good example of the changes that we're already making. And I think that's really a good example of earlier decisions during the transformation programme, moving to the hybrid mixed economy model and strengthening the County Council's maintenance management capacity, which has given us that additional rigour and performance management of individual activities within the service. As we've talked about the impact of winter, it was also significant in terms of the numbers of enquiries, which was significantly higher than the previous year from late 2023 onwards. The graphs follow the same format. Top left, blue line is last year, orange line is this year. Positive news for the last few months, we've been very much similar to the previous year. However, if you compare 2023 with the year before, 2023 in total, we received about 49,000 enquiries. 2022 in total, we received around 31,000 enquiries. The average between 2012 and 22 was just under 31,000. So we are, in general, seeing a significant increase in number of enquiries about our network. In the year to date, we've had 42,000 enquiries to the end of August, which, if we project through to the end of the year and get a similar number of enquiries, we could be as much as 48,000 enquiries this year, which is a significant increase in demand on our inspection time. Hence why, on the right-hand side, despite the fact that we have put additional capacity into the inspection team, we definitely had a challenge during the winter in responding to the enquiries in our target times. Probably also the inspection team, they are now part of the County Council. They have been for 2 years. They don't just do enquiries. Our key statutory duty to keep our network safe means that typically they will do in the next quarter, they will inspect over 2,300 kilometres of roads under planned inspections. They'll also inspect numerous other features such as trash screens on a monthly basis, and they also deal with the reports, the enquiries, but also reports and evidence for claims against the authority. We have got some ongoing challenges. We did front load the resource in the recovery plan to take advantage of the summer weather, longer working hours, less risk of crews being unable to carry out work because of wet weather. That will start to scale back in the autumn as we deliver the balance of the £2 million investment. As I said previously, the work stack hasn't reduced as much as expected. Really due to those two main factors, we're seeing higher numbers of jobs continue to be identified, primarily through our annual safety inspections, reflecting the condition of that part of the network, and a focus on, as we've said, larger repairs to minimise future visits to the same location. I think it's clear we are seeing the effects of climate change, and more of that later. But looking ahead, we've also got some further challenges. We have got a £5 million gap if we maintain the current extra resources that we've got on the ground. We have been using resources to fund 2 extra gas cuts and 2 weed sprays from reserves. We're seeing the cost of replacement vehicles, generally on a 5-year programme. There's quite a significant number of vehicles needed replacing in the last few months because of that 5-year period. We had the benefit during that 5 years of fixed rates. We've seen those increase significantly, and of course we're also waiting the autumn spending review for news on the previously announced Network North and LTP investment, and not forgetting the County Council's own medium-term financial savings. Last weekend, really good example of the impact that one weekend and the impact that climate change can have on our network. On the right-hand side, a photograph of a section of road that, as you see, has been completely washed away. What you probably won't see in the photograph, in the bottom right-hand corner of the hole, there's the remains of a brick arched culvert, which has been washed out by the storm. I think that's probably the kind of most significant damage that we've had, although we were very busy giving out sandbags to keep water on the highway. We were dealing with mudslides, and we did have a number of locations where we have had some damage across the network. In terms of numbers, you can contact, so Report It, people still use Report It over the weekend. It is a 24/7 service. Report It enquiries the weekend before were 41 on the Saturday, 41 on the Sunday. That's the 2 green lines on the bar chart on the top left, compared to last weekend, where there was 212 received via Report It over the same period. So 2.5 times more than normal just during that one weekend. Now they will get looked at and triaged by the inspection team when they come back in on the Monday, and they are currently working their way through those. The other thing to note, out of hours pager, which is the bottom of the screen, typically out of hours pager will get 10 to 20 calls per night. 248 calls in total received over that weekend. One of them would have been to do with this defect, and that one defect in its alone is probably several tens of thousands of pounds of repair work, new pipe work, gabions going in either side of the road to reinforce the road, and then obviously rebuilding the road. Perhaps not forget as well, those crews that are working at the weekend, and we had significant crews out at the weekend and significant officer time at the weekend. That does then have an impact on the Monday, because those crews, they have to have a rest period and are not available on the Monday. So we will see a dip then in the week in terms of repairs being undertaken because those crews have been busy at the weekend. I think it's also worth noting, because I think there's been some comments on social media, note the construction of the road on the right-hand side. You know, if you do drill down into that, what you'll see is, you know, that road's probably more than 100 years old. It's what we call an evolved road. It was never designed in the first place. It's probably not much more than tar and chippings historically that have been layered on top of each other, sitting directly on top of the natural road surface. That's fairly typical of much of our rural road network, and I think it really does illustrate the point of the challenge of how those roads can quite quickly deteriorate when we get the kind of wet weather that we've got. Second part of the recovery plan, pause, is the capital maintenance programme. Another really good news story. Lots of challenges getting this on the network, lots of impact on the network. You know, those are people that are coming into Stafford regularly, obviously affected at the moment. We are on programme. There's a couple of schemes that have had to be slightly rescheduled because of some conflicts on the network, but we're on programme to deliver. 16 schemes this year, either completed or currently on site being built. 4 more being designed and due to be mobilised during Q3 and Q4. Haven't included the hotspots number in it. There's a number of hotspot sites as well, including locations such as the M54, A460 junction at Featherstone. Now we've had confirmation that National Highways are actually due to replace the island, but are unlikely to start within the next 3 years. So again, lots of activity. I think one of the challenges has been actually the level of complaint about the number of roadworks that are on our network. So there is that challenge between fixing the roads and the complaint that we get because of roadworks on the network. Our preventative surface treatments programme, probably as much as anything our flagship part of the programme. 459 roads, 150 miles of treatment, 95% complete. 100,000 square metres of pre-patching work already delivered in advance of the 2025 programme. And that has allowed accelerated delivery of over 51 roads of preventative surface treatment from next year to be done this year. We've managed to do the majority of those. It is a very weather-sensitive operation, and there have been a few roads in the north of the county when it went quite cold last week where we took the decision to finish our surface treatment in that part of the county to avoid the risk that they fail. We don't want the reputational risk that they fail, and we don't want the having to go back and do the work again. I think, again, big credit to the council's delivery model and the supply chain, which allowed us to get ahead of that 2025 programme. And we've delivered, I'd say, around about 20 miles of next year's programme in the current year. Hand you back to James now.
Thank you, David. There's not a lot to say on this. Just wanted to take the opportunity, I think, to talk about the communications piece is such a complementary factor to all that operational detail that David's just talked about. It's something that this committee has obviously challenged us on before, that we could do so much more around communications, and this committee has given us a lot of recommendations which we've put into motion, into plan. And really just to make you really aware that the communications is now at the absolute heart of not just the recovery plan, the capital maintenance programme, but the transformation programme overall. It's it's really cost effective, but it's very low cost, shall we say, and the benefit in terms of helping raise awareness of the activity that's going on the network and address some of those concerns that David's alluded to as well, including sometimes about the amount of roadworks that are taking place is absolutely key. So just a few bullet points on here, just on a couple of slides to whiz through. Every structural maintenance scheme now does have a bespoke comms and engagement plan with it. That includes press releases that are issued throughout the life of the scheme. I'd highlight in particular the A34 scheme in Stafford, coming from Weeping Cross through Radford Bank into Stafford. It's one of the biggest maintenance schemes we've done for quite some time, and to support the bespoke comms plan for that and PR plan for that, we produced an online walkthrough video with one of the engineers who was actually one of the engineers who worked on that scheme when it was last resurfaced about 30 years ago. So he talks through that as a very authentic, this is what he remembers from the site and how it's aged, how it's performed, and what he's quite excited about what's going to come next in terms of the new maintenance. And we've got some really, really positive feedback on social media about that type of activity. There was also a community engagement day held for that scheme. It is such a significant scheme and it will inevitably be disruptive for quite a period of time. So a big community engagement day there which was packed to the rafters again, and some really positive feedback from local communities and getting some really good insight as well about the challenges it's going to create for them, and that helps us then manage the programme of activity and how we manage traffic throughout the delivery of that scheme. And there's now just generally much more localised communications have been created in the form of things like district and borough-based newsletters that are issued once a month with general highway news as well as scheme-specific updates in each borough. And the first of those was issued in July. It's been shared with members and again has been made accessible to the public, and we're getting some really big take-up in terms of that activity. At an operational level, also continuing to develop and roll out the road repair crew whereabouts information, sharing information with local members in advance where we can. Those programmes do often change, again, particularly subject to the weather, but providing forward information to local members and supported with social media templates, etc., to help members, sort of spread the word, raise local awareness of activity on the network and be able to answer local questions at source where possible. We're also continuing to develop and build up a library of what's called evergreen explainer videos. So providing explanations on things like potholes are identified, how they're prioritised, and then the repair techniques that are done for them, why we carry out surface dressing on roads that might appear to the general public as already in good condition, so why are you doing that? So providing that kind of evergreen content and using insight from the feedback from those type of things and from social media posts and local members and community teams to help develop and build up a sort of Q&A around being able to sort of bust the myths and help an understanding of generally about why we do the things that we do and how we do the things that we do. So then the final element is just takes sort of segues that then into the final item, which is just a general update on the wider highway transformation programme activity. So I won't dwell on this, but a very brief recap. The whole programme supports the delivery of the County Council's priority to fix more roads and improve transport and digital connections. It's a key part of the Council's strategic plan, and it translates into a new vision for the County Council's highway service, of which there are those 3 key delivery items. This slide, I know it's very wordy, I'm not going to read through it, but it's really just to illustrate some of the progress that's been made that's already been referred to a few times. The slide actually only represents about 1/3 of the overall activity and things that have been achieved so far, but I just highlight a few key ones that are in there. It includes things like transferring some of the key service functions back to the direct control of the County Council, such as the highway safety inspections and the network management capability around quality assurance and so on. It also is about or includes the reorganisation, enabling the mixed economy operating model in the least disruptive and most cost-effective way possible. So that's in place now and implemented. It includes, as David's already referred a lot to, about the successful delivery of over £40 million worth of extra investment to date, including lots of different pilots and trials and, to deliver on local priorities, and also a workforce development plan and future planning, providing short-term improvements and longer-term resilience and skills to really be able to sustain the ambitions of the transformation programme. One of the key things in there is also then about AI capability. So I'm going to hand back to David briefly to just say a little bit more about this. I know it's of interest, and then I've got one final slide at the end.
Thank you, James. Yeah, there's been a lot of coverage of this. We're one of a handful of authorities that has started using a product called Visala Road AI. In essence, it's what we call a condition survey. It supplements what we do through our inspectors, and it gives us that condition information. I talked earlier on about the DFT and the challenge of local roads data. The current way that is used is very technical. Bespoke vehicles that come in and do that work is quite expensive. We don't survey the whole of the network. Visala Road AI is kind of quite a groundbreaker in the capabilities that it gives us and how that allows us to use AI in a different way. So what's it all about? Well, at the heart of it is quite simple. It's a smartphone that sits in the screen of a vehicle. Our inspection team's vehicles, when they leave the depot, they turn it on. It captures video data as they drive around the network during that day, whether that's on planned inspections or routine inspections. Primarily on the planned at the moment, but we're looking to move it more and more into routine. Overnight, it gets uploaded to the Visala computer system. It does a load of data cleaning. It applies a load of machine learning, and the product that we get out of that is then displayed back on a mapping system, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. I'll blow that up a little bit. So that's a part of Burton-on-Trent. You might recognise it. It assesses the roads and puts the roads into one of 5 condition bands, 1 to 5, green being good, red being requires us to take a look at it. Might not necessarily mean there's an intervention, but red is saying to the engineers, there's something going on here along this route that you need to go and look at. It gives us a lot more technical information sitting in the background. What you see on the bottom left is the video surveys that are captured through that camera. They're captured in HD. They are available to us. What you might also see if you kind of zoom in on it is the vehicles and pedestrians are blacked out. Make sure that we're compliant with the GDPR issues. So they get blacked out by the system. The system does that. It's not a fault on the video. The system's done that deliberately. But it allows us to also then look at, and you probably won't see the detail, but on the right-hand side where the map is, there should be a little arrow somewhere along there. That arrow reflects the position of the vehicle at which that video is paused. You can play through the video, you can see past videos, so we can actually see if something's changing on the network. And that's something that we're going to increasingly focus on the future. How do we use this combined with other data to give us better intelligence where something's happened to the network that we don't necessarily expect? Usually means there's something deteriorating, and can we intervene earlier? What you'll see above the video, just some of the kind of condition data that we get. You can see on the right-hand side that road is generally in a good condition. It's green, and that's built up from those parameters that you can see on the top left, which are a high-level assessment of surface defects, cracking, crazing, other defects that are assessed by the survey. What the system also does, and it's increasingly being taught to do this, it is machine learning, so it has to be taught. That's the principle of AI. On the right on the screen there, what you see is lots of traffic signs appearing, lots of road markings appearing. The system can pick those up as well. It is picking those up as well. We've got to do some thinking around making sure we do these routes in both directions, because of course it can clearly only see a traffic sign in the direction that it's travelling towards. So we're thinking about how we then improve that in future and change our inspection routing each time we do it, so we capture signs. For example, in the future, the system will be able to say to us, by the way, David, there was a keep left sign here last time we looked at it, but it's not here this time. You need to go and have a look, because maybe it's been knocked down, maybe it's been removed, maybe it needs replacement. That kind of data appears on that screen on the right-hand side. So I've repeated the screen that we saw earlier on with the condition data, but on the right-hand side, again, just an example of some of the data that the AI is being taught to pick up. It's already picking up road markings. It can already pick up traffic signs. It's being taught to pick up locations of gullies. It's being taught to pick up ironwork, manhole covers. It's being taught to pick up areas that are ponding. So although from a condition survey point of view in wet weather we wouldn't normally use that data, actually it still gives us good data in wet weather, because if we're seeing ponding on the network, the system is being trained to pick that up. So again, we can use that intelligence to identify where the hotspots are. What can it also do? It can actually, it's being taught at the moment to identify potholes. It doesn't work out the depth, it doesn't necessarily work out the size in a square meterage, but it's simply classifying them at the moment as, is it small, is it medium, is it large? And again, when we take that data in the future, we've got another system that's being developed in the background where we will then combine all this data, the condition data, the inquiry data, the claims data, the defects data. We will clash all that together in a new system that we're developing that will allow teams to take all that data together and get what I describe a hotspot analysis on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis, so that we are identifying changes to the network a lot quicker than we are at the moment, and that should allow us to intervene wherever we can, often before the customer starts to report those enquiries, because we're seeing it through our condition data that we're capturing. Big change on that, kind of just to make the point about the DFT condition data. The traditional data techniques would have meant that on our A-class roads, we would have surveyed the road in one direction once per year. So we'd have got one lane in one direction once per year. We now get that data every month as part of our planned safety inspections. On our unclassified parts of the network, we would have done one direction once every 4 years, which would meant our data on our unclassified network could be up to 8 years old. We will now get that on an annual basis, or better if we've gone and done a reactive inspection. So with the amount of data that we're getting to see what's happening to our network is now far more contemporary, and will allow us to really rethink the way we use that data in the future to build programmes. I think I'm going to hand back to James now.
Brilliant, thank you, David. Sorry, Madam Chair. I know I said I'd got one slide. I've got two slides left. I think that just to draw this up, or draw it to a close in terms of the wider transformation programme, to enable the prioritisation of a lot of that operational activity and changes, improvements that David's just been talking about. There has had to be some alterations to the original transformation programme that we've presented updates to this committee on previously. Other than changing delivery dates of a handful of schemes to help fund and finance the recovery plan, the in-year recovery plan, those changes, though, don't involve any alterations to frontline operational delivery improvement priorities. That's an important point I just wanted to stress. Cabinet members have been absolutely clear with us that the operational response, the operational improvements is front and centre, the most important. That's the stuff that has the greatest impact on members and customers. And that sort of customer experience data also backs that up as well. It's the speed of the response, it's the scale and magnitude of that capability, which is far more important to our customers. However, some minor changes have been needed to free up the specialists and key resources needed to mobilise that recovery plan and make those kind of operational improvements as well. So we have had to make some changes to the wider transformation programme, and that includes an adjustment to, or slipping if you like, the launch of the new customer service portal. So that was originally due to come on live in September, but that's now moved back to December. Some more significant changes needed as well, and later updates, some more significant changes to the delivery programmes of some of the other updates as well have had to be pushed back a little bit further, as you can see summarised on that slide there. And that improves things like that includes things like improving self-help information to access to forward delivery programmes, you know, things like grass cutting or gully emptying, that type of activity, which will definitely be improving through the new customer relations management system in the future. But it's just being held back a little bit, as I say, to free up the capacity to do this operational response in the shorter term. But as well as those changes around the customer relations and customer improvements areas, we're also taking the positives from that as an opportunity to realign better with some of the kind of workforce development activity as well, so that when those things do come online later on in the year, they'll land with a bigger bang, if you like. They'll have more impact because we'll have the skills across the teams as well to be able to, and the capacity within the teams as well to be able to support and implement it more effectively. And then the final slide I get to is just really pulling together into a bit of a summary of what our next steps are really on the wider transformation programme. Members have been very, cabinet members and the strategic board that provide the senior governance to the transformation programme have been very clear about the priority is to deliver the in-year recovery plan and the existing capital works programmes, which maximise that visibility of the investment on the ground, and which is the most important thing in terms of customer satisfaction. The revised milestones for the remaining transformation activities really just shape that and support that direction. It still remains a huge undertaking, a huge challenge. It's not without some potential pitfalls or further changes maybe as we work through particularly through the winter months. But overall, we are in a very good place and going in the right direction. And I think that's the end of the slide deck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we've had nearly an hour of you talking to us, so we probably forgot what was said in the first bit. Any questions from members? Graham.
Thank you. The picture which made the BBC News of the the gully collapse reminded me that, particularly where it's boggy, often you'll find bushes laid down with just rock on top. And these roads, or most of our country roads, were not designed for heavy trucks or heavy farm machinery. And a 24-ton grain trailer and a 10-ton tractor is a hell of a weight going down those roads. So I'm not surprised to see gully collapses. I'm delighted as a member that complaints about potholes are now complaints about roads being roadworks happening. But on the way here, out of 6 roadworks, 3 were utilities. And I just think, and they were the biggest, and I was just thinking, how are they managed? Do we have, I suppose we don't have any say in that. A couple more points, and then I'll let you come back to me. What residents have asked me, and I've written to Keith and Mark about this, is they'd like a 10-minute pitch to explain to them the difficulties and the wonders of highways. Something that would excite them with nice pictures of road collapses, the Visala system, etc. But it needs to be short because attention span is... And my last point is there any way we can persuade farmers to leave a 3-metre permanent pasture band alongside all the roads? Because driving along, when you see in torrential rain, just mud pouring off fields, and I just think a 3-metre permanent pasture band along, and to encourage them, you could then say, and if you do plough to the edge, we will charge you for cleaning the roads, and make sure that that's a couple of £1,000 a time. And I think you'll find that farmers will respond. I also think that would help biodiversity, which is I know it's a different department, but it's something that Staffordshire is trying to benefit. And that's it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, who wants to pick those up then? Shall I just pick on somebody? Darryl, Rob, or Keith?
I've got part. Yeah, there's a number of questions there. I think we'll probably all share the answer. I pick up sort of the utility work. You know, as a member, I've had issues where utility companies have closed basically a major road through my division, leaving people with a 25-minute detour to get into from work every day. So to some extent, we can't stop them. We work with them as best we can to plan in works and suggest to them where works are best done. But at the end of the day, they can just come and access our network and do their works. I can give an example of where we have worked with them. So again, a major scheme I had in my division, we convinced them to do the work in the summer holidays when the road was quietest, because it was a major school route. And there's another one of the capital programme schemes has been delayed until February next year because Cadent came along and said we want to relay the gas main. So instead of us doing the work and then Cadent coming along a few months later and digging up a fresh road, we're actually going to work together. And a result of that is we can actually do more of the road than we'd originally planned by working with the utility provider.
Thank you, Chair. On top of the utility thing that Rob's just told you about, the members' meetings that we are now having in the north, the network team does in fact come to those meetings. I think you attended the first one of the ones we did up in Newcastle. And they actually try and preempt some of the information and working that's going to be going on over the coming months. So that's part of what we're trying to do with members, so they have direct input into the network team and how they operate. In terms of presentation, yes, I've got no problem about trying to come out and helping out members if need be in community groups. We have meetings arranged already for the Parish Assembly up in the Staffordshire Moorlands. So over in my area, I'm quite happy to come out. Now we've got more of the plan established and what's been going on over the recent months. So that will be done. In terms of how short the presentation will be, I think we'll go for an hour and a half next time, guys, shall we? We beat them into submission by doing that. I'm only joking. I don't know about the 3 metre. I think you'd have to introduce that at national level I don't think we've got any chance of just asking our own farmers to set that, because that would be a lot of land they'd lose doing that, I should think. Sorry? We can speak to the NFU. Yeah, we can speak to the NFU, I should think would be the only thing that we could do on that front. Okay.
Philippa?
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a few questions, so I can either whizzle through or you can tell me to shut up. With regards to the condition survey, the VISLA equipment, who's planning what roads are surveyed and when? And does it pick up on the pavement mapping as well? Is that being programmed into it? And when do we decide when we're going back round to go back the other way? The inspection teams, who's assessing the quality of the work, whether it's the reactive maintenance or if it's after we've done the preventative surface treatment, who's going down there to inspect that work to make sure it's to standard, ready for the work next year? The communication boards off the back of the preventative surface treatments, there was loads in the area of Cannock Chase, which is great, but the information was at times confusing because of the dates being rolling. Residents would drive past one board and see one date, come to another board and see another date, and then didn't know which road was going to be closed on which dates because we'd got into feeding areas. The local newsletter, that's brilliant, but I think it needs to have a mention of which councillor has pushed that work for. So great that it says Cannock Chase, but if it's a Rugeley councillor that's been lobbying or working really hard to get that particular road repaired, I think it needs to be highlighted, and that can be improved with the communications. With regards to the environmental team, I think that's amazing. It's had a big impact for my residents, particularly with regards to pavements. I've got a number of ageing pavements that are difficult to access, so to get the hedges cut back really quickly is brilliant. And with the level of investment that we put forward this year, I just wondered what impact that was going to have on our budget for next year, if it was going to have any at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll teamwork some of these questions. I'll pick up the newsletter. So we do our best to share what the authority is doing, but what we are doing is we're giving to ward members their own template PRs. So if a scheme's been done in your division, I would encourage you as a member to go down there with your mobile phone and do a video, do some comms, do some PR. You don't rely on the county council to that for you, because we're as an entity we'll do the corporate comms. I would encourage individual members to get out there and do their own comms. Send the template press release, personalise it, send it to the local newspaper, do your own videos, get it on social media, because it's a two-pronged attack. We're all part of that, selling the message that the authority is doing more roads. We can pick up the point about dates. I don't know if you want to email specific works where the signs on dates might not be accurate. I know in some of the schemes they'll issue a road closure order for say a whole week, but they might not be on site for a whole week, so they have been, some of the engineers have been quite good at opening up the road actually so people can use it in between the different stages, because I know when people see the road's going to be closed for a week, they think, oh, how am I going to get to school, how am I going to get to work? So they do try and minimise the disruption and keep the road open as long as possible, and only keep closed the bits they're working on. So often they'll be working their way up the road and moving the closure as they go. I think, David, are you able to pick up the AI question?
Yeah, thank you. So the excuse me, the Visala Road AI, it's primarily deployed with our planned safety inspections at the moment. So the frequency of which we pick that data up is either monthly, quarterly, 6 monthly, or annually. Now, we've had it in place since, I think, about February. We started using it. So we haven't got all the annual stuff yet. We've got all the monthlies, got all the quarterlies, got most of the 6 monthlies. Annuals we haven't got yet, but what we're doing is at the moment we are supplementing that by looking what are we not going to get for another 4 or 5 months, and going around that and put it in another vehicle and picking that up. So the plan is by the end of the calendar year we've got a full condition survey of the whole of our network. You asked about pavement. It's primarily looking at carriageway at the moment. It's being taught to look at pavements. One of the challenges with pavements, again, is where it is in the vehicle and can the vehicle see the pavement. If you've seen the Google Street View car, you know, the cameras are sat up. It's a very specialist vehicle. So there's a bit of a compromise on that, and we'll just have to look at that to see how good that's going to be. You can see from the videos that if you can see the pavements, it can do the same analysis. But we're just going to have a look at that. We're looking at that with Visala at the moment. The other option is, you know, we're looking at, it's not just, you know, footways by the side of the road, for example. We've got link footpaths. My colleagues often joke, you know, give a couple of us a mobility scooter and we'll zoom around those, or we'll zoom round on a bicycle, because you could literally sit it on a bicycle. You could sit it on a GoPro. You can use it. It's a camera. It's a smartphone. That's all it is. So if we can stick it on a vehicle, or stick it on somebody or stick it on a bicycle, there's lots of ways we could in future think about using it to develop it. Reverse direction, we only need the reverse direction at the moment because of the signs. It will pick the condition survey up as long as it can see the carriageway in both directions, which it generally can. It picks it up for the full carriageway. The signs issue is just, yeah, if the sign is facing towards the vehicle, obviously it can see it, but if it's looking at the back of the sign, it doesn't have an idea. So again, we're just looking at if we tweak our inspections in the future so that we do them in reverse directions, we'll get that data then in both directions, which will improve the data anyway, because you can get the occasions where sunlight and time of day can have a slight impact on its ability to pick up some data. I think you have to question about quality as well. So there's a variety of mechanisms through which we'll look at the quality of work in general. So we've got, from the county council perspective, starting with schemes, we've got a clerk of works that's regularly on site. That's supplemented by the engineers. So we collect the information from that. They're looking at the quality from our perspective. We have a compliance officer that works in the maintenance management team that will look at anything from pothole repairs to gully emptying to grass cutting across the county. And then we also have our traffic and network management team who do sample inspections, both on utilities and our own highway work. And then we blend all that three together. As I kind of described earlier on, it's quite technical, because we'll pick up, you know, a sandbag not being on the sign is a non-compliance because the sign might blow over. But we are also picking up quality issues that kind of are more general, but it's just how we draw those out. That is in addition to Amy have a comprehensive quality management system, which is independently certified at kind of their group level and deployed in Staffordshire. So again, we see all the data from that. It does pick up stuff that's very similar to what we see in terms of the kind of things they check for. It's quite detailed. That's one of the measures we're looking how we can pull that out to create that overall quality measure that we're really interested in. What does it look at from a customer? What does it look at from a highway user point of view? Surface dressing itself, once we've done the dressing, we will do a number of inspections, normally several inspections of the treatment through the winter. We know we'll get one or two that fail. It's the nature of the kind of beast to some degree, but it's a very, very small number. And actually, there's a 2-year guarantee for preventative treatment anyway, which the contractor comes back and then puts right. So it's in their interest to make sure it's done right. You know, they were the ones saying to us in the north of the county a couple of weeks ago, it's getting a bit cold, it's getting a bit risky. We really don't want to be doing this because of the risk of failure. So there is a lot that we gather in terms of quality, yeah, and we use that obviously to then go, have we got repeat failures? Have we got repeat issues? What do we need to do differently?
Just to pick up the budget question, so at the end of the day, the limiting factor to our capital schemes and road repairs and the top surface treatments is how much money we are able to put into that. In terms of the breakdown, so we'd originally planned to put in 15 million, and it might sound a lot, but that gets split 3 ways. 5 million to pothole repairs, 5 million to capital schemes, 5 million to preventative treatments. And when you look at some of our capital programmes, you know, you've got one scheme alone can be 1.5 million. So that doesn't cover a lot of the county. We were fortunate that the previous government had made a commitment of around £400 million over the next few years of additional highways funding. So that would be a real game changer to the authority, because that would really help us to sustain this push and go a lot further, because we'd only received, I think, about 6 million so far. So we really could ramp this up. But at the moment, we're in the dark whether that money is actually going to remain committed. You know, there is a question then, well, are we able to sustain this if we aren't getting that money from central government that has previously been promised?
if I can just really quickly, with regards to the sort of the quality inspections, if I could just use one example, we've had a road that we've highlighted as a member that we need repairing, and it's gone through and members funding and that plans. So it's been inspected, the potholes have been highlighted that are going to be worked on. I as a member then go down and think, actually, is this pothole on there? It's checked, it isn't listed. Okay, can you make sure that one's on there because the road's going to be closed? Yep, great. So you think all of that road's going to be done, the road's closed. You then go down 2 weeks later after it's finished and there's a variance in repairs. So you've perhaps got some lovely, neat square ones, some that look like they've been temporary filled, that have been done at the same time, and then other potholes that have still been missed. And I don't mean the ones that are just like a little dent on the surface where it's come away, that are still a proper pothole that I would report if my car went through it. But that road's been closed and it's supposedly been inspected. So I think that definitely still needs looking at, because if we're closing a road and causing an impact for a resident, all those residents, and it's been inspected, and I'm still picking up the defects, that should be an inspector's job, picked up, and not mine to go back down and highlight those issues again.
Yeah, I say on that, if you can send through the details, we can look at that and get back to you.
David.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, can I apologise for my late arrival? There's complicated reasons why that was, which I'll talk to you about later. Can I just first say that Lichfield Rural South, which I represent, is a very, very rural division and has very, very significant rural problems. And so when we talk about urban problems and rural problems, they are very significantly different. But if I could just, with your indulgence, Chairman, run through some points that I would like to look at. I was looking particularly at the member fund, where we have additional funding at the discretion of members. That really just increases the highway fund, and all that we do really is just shuffle the pieces on the board, which I suppose is fair enough. I would be interested, the point that was made earlier on about ditches. That's a major problem in my division, and I'd be very interested to know what our plans are as far as ditches are concerned. I would also mention, where we start looking at blockages within the system, at harvest time we can have an inspection which is done on day one, and by day two the system is blocked again with straw and whatever else that's come off as a result of harvesting. I understand from a statement that the leader made at a meeting that I was at recently that no work was being done on pavements at all, because there was the work which was being done that will impact on pavements that will need to be picked up for services to be installed. I don't think that that really applies to all pavements, and I don't understand why it is that we had engineers that turned up in my division, repaired about 100 yards of pavement. They said they were coming back again the next day. We've never seen them since. And so we have pothole pavements, and then perfect pavement, and then pothole pavements again following onwards. I'm concerned particularly with rural areas where we recently had 2 potholes that needed to be repaired. The one was on the side of the road, and that was done and done fairly quickly. The one that's in the middle of the road has not been done. It's now several months that it's been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I do understand that that may well require a road closure, but there are road closures by other services on that particular road. Is there no way that we're able to coordinate other services that are requiring road closures on the same road where work can be done at one and the same time? I was interested in a statement that was made by an AME officer to a subcontractor who said that one of the delays that AME had was that they couldn't clear the paperwork fast enough to implement the job. That would concern me. I understand, Chairman, that we are looking at, I don't know what the system is called, but putting the sort of black sealed edges onto potholes, and I wondered what the progress was on that. I'm concerned, Chairman, when we start looking at it, it's a wider issue, but the government's plans as far as increased housing are concerned, Lichfield District Council, 2,500 more houses than they have identified. I don't see how that can be achieved without increased infrastructure, and how we're going to be able to provide the highway accommodation for new housing. And the last thing I wanted to mention, and it's a problem throughout the whole of my division, which we need to address at some stage, is the ever-growing rat running. Now, if we're looking at the comments which were made earlier about roads were never intended for the sort of volumes of traffic and weight of traffic that we currently have, it isn't surprising that our rural roads are collapsing because we're using them in a way they were never designed to be used. And I really think at some stage, Chairman, that we need to be looking at how we're going to deal with the rat running situation. Thank you, Chairman.
Again, range of questions, so we'll share those out amongst ourselves. I can pick up in terms of the pavement point, so there's a sort of moratorium on pavement repairs for sort of maintenance purposes because of the broadband rollout. So, you know, many of us will have seen paths in our divisions, in our neighbourhoods being dug up for the superfast broadband being laid. But this is the last year that moratorium is been in place because it should be finished soon. Emergency repairs, safety repairs have still been taking place. It's just the routine maintenance that's been held up while we've gone through that. I think it's a number of the questions that we'll share amongst us.
So ditches, yeah, roadside ditches are generally the responsibility of the adjoining landowners. You know, if I go back to when I first came to Staffordshire, we had quite an extensive ditching programme. We reduced that to take money out of the service over the years and try and encourage landowners, and we've had various attempts at encouraging landowners. We are at the point where we're kind of recognising that we need to go in and do some of these because they're having an impact on our network. So that's the programme that we are putting together. We're going to combine that, though, is once we've got those hotspots, we'll be working with our teams to then start engaging and identifying those landowners to remind them that having done some work, by the way, you know, you need to maintain these ditches now because they are yours. There's a lot of miscommunicating. You know, most people go, it's a ditch, it's just because it's on the highway, it's not the highway authorities necessarily. There are a few exceptions, but generally they are the adjoining landowners. I think inspection, that's a really transient issue, isn't it? I mean, I guess you're talking about, you know, straw being blown off vehicles and sitting on top of gully empties. I mean, you know, unless we can encourage kind of farmers to do that, I think that's really very difficult for us to plan inspections around that and then react to it. But again, maybe something if it's a really significant issue when you've got your time with your environmental crews, if they happen to be in that part of the world and that's something they can do safely, maybe something to think about. Road closures, can we better coordinate? We do an awful lot of coordination at the moment. We have about 70,000 permitted activities on the network each year. So if we are aware of our own highway works and road closures by utilities and we can combine them, we will combine them. Often we can't combine them because they're different types of work or they have different requirements for those closures. So we do attempt to coordinate them wherever we can. Do we successfully coordinate all of them? No, we don't. Really just because we've not necessarily got the ability to be as fleet as foot as we may need to be at times to be able to plan work around utilities. Often the utilities may only give us a few day notice, for example, because it's an emergency.
Could I just pick up on that point? We as members get notices of planned road closures. I mean, those are not emergency road closures, but we do actually know when a road is going to be closed, and I forward that information to the parish councils. So we're fully aware as members of the road closure. It just appears that the county council, though they send that information out, it doesn't seem to filter through to how we could deal with road repairs at the same time.
Again, I think the point, as an emergency closure, It's that balance of, you know, we are planning works, we're planning low risk works up to 12 weeks ahead. So there's always that balance to be struck between then taking those crews off on work that's planned to drop on to work that the utilities have asked for an emergency closure on. And that's a real balance that we do. We do try as much as we can and wherever we can, but there is that real balance between moving crews around and letting somebody else down because we've not then delivered the work that we've promised them to do, and dropping those same crews onto something that we've only just been made aware of. Can we do more? Yes, but it is trying to get that balance right between those two conflicting demands.
Before I bring the next person in, can we keep our questions to Highways Transformation Programme, and we'll move on a little bit quicker than we are at the moment. Charlotte, you're next.
That morning was obviously in time. First of all, can I just say how useful it was to do the walkthrough on Buxton Road leak with some of my colleagues. It was actually a very useful exercise. But I think what's missing from your presentation is trees. Because especially in places like the moorlands, you can have many overgrown trees, and I've just been hearing about several, but one in particular where high-sided vehicles have to cross the road into the other carriageway to avoid the overgrown tree. And I think that when trees are reported by residents for various reasons, whether because of visibility issues or high-sided vehicle issues, or just because in high winds they're fed up with being very terrified actually of big branches breaking off. And I think that the highways network, or the people who are looking at the trees, the tree officers and so on, don't take on board the fact that when trees start shedding branches, it does have a psychological effect on neighbours, but it also has an issue around safety. Another issue, which I mean, you talk about your capital programmes. I was given a capital programme for St Edward Street leak, I think, several years ago, and it's become a sort of fantasy project, really, because it's supposed to be a 6-stage programme to revamp the road. Nothing is started, and so, you know, it becomes a fantasy. And I said, despite AI, it's still very possible for the County Council completely shoot itself in the foot. And I've raised this one with Darryl, where there's a patch of grass. And what does the county do? They put bollards around it, which ensures that they can't then get the machines through to cut the grass. And despite the fact that I raised it with Darryl, you know, grass cutting people arrive, and then you find that they can't actually access the grass. I mean, so obviously that's not something AI can pick up, but it would be really nice if, you know, because it makes residents think, well, does the county really know what they're doing? And I appreciate that the bollards were put there to stop residents, you know, destroying the edge of the grass. But then, having been reported several times, you would hope, wouldn't you, you get it sorted out. It's such a minor issue, but it's the sort of thing that customers, residents highlight as being, you know, the county doesn't know what it's doing.
Thank you. I'll just take the grass cutting one because I've been having some issues in that with other areas as well, in East Staffs and stuff, doing a similar thing. Parking on curbs is something that's been happening more and more and more. It's not just in your area, it's across the whole county. And trying to get those cars moved so that then the grass can be cut, or getting within a certain distance of those cars.
You've got it wrong. It's the fact that bollards were put up.
Oh, bollards were put up.
And as a result, the bollards that were put up by the County Council have now prevented the grass cutting teams from cutting the grass.
Oh, well, we'll have to bring that up with Darryl.
Well, I mean, it's been brought up on many occasions, and it's still not happening, despite the fact I raised it with Darryl a week or so ago. Well,
let me know, and I'll chase that one up then. In terms of trees and things, we've had quite a lot of issues regarding trees in terms of whose land they're on and all the rest of it. So if you could let me know which trees you're on about and whether or not they're on the side of the road or whether it's on someone else's land or anything else, then that would make a difference. All we can do if it's on someone else's land is recommend that they do the work. We've had the same with hedges at junctions in my division, and in the end we had to then go back after warning several years, and in the end the landlord had to pay for us cutting the hedges back. So it takes a long time sometimes to get people to do their responsibilities. So again, if you can let me know which particular trees you're on about, then I can pursue that one. Capital programme, the 6th stage thing, is that to do with your DHP, or is it something that you've been following up?
No, it's something which was in the programme. I walked with Mike Smith, it must be 4 years ago now. It's nothing to do with DHP, it's much bigger than that. It's about revamping St Edward Street, making it more consistent width, and dealing with also the roads off, pedestrianisation and so on. And it was a 6-phase plan which was consulted on, and actually, you know, nothing's going to happen.
Say the members meeting, Mike and his team do turn up to those members meetings, so it would have been something you could have followed up there. But if again, let me know and I'll have to take that forward, because that's something, if it's not on the capital programme now, then it probably won't be looked at for some time, so it's important to try and follow up on that one. I think that's about it, all I can do at the moment. Is there anything else anyone else wants to?
I think there was just a brief follow-up on that grass cutting one. I think we do remember that one being raised before, and I think what was happening was that the error was acknowledged. The grass cutter was using hand trimmers in the short term. I think it's been cut a couple of times since, and they're going to review whether retrospectively they can replace one of the bollards with just a demountable, basically, and that'll be the solution.
Just get it to happen then, because they're not happy.
Can we make sure the questions come through the chair, please? Otherwise I'll lose track of who's speaking when. Bernard, you're next.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to put all of this together, that I've got as questions for you. First and foremost, by classifications, you say levels 1, 2 and 3 for potholes. What good is it giving any pothole a level 3 classification when theoretically, until the 1s and 2s are all completed, they will never be done? You have people waiting 3 years after complaining that you know, they have a problem, and it's still not being done. So what is the use of it? And also, when we talk, and it was very interesting about the water that you're talking about coming from the sky, but what about the water you get from private land that goes onto the highway, and by doing so creates problems whereby holes appear in the surface of the road that where the water's going to, and consequently they just do not get repaired correctly. In fact, I have a place where one never gets corrected, simply because the water, after you put out some hole repair, it just takes that repair out after 3 days. So, you know, we need to find out what the responsibility is of the landowners and what is our attitude to that, and how can we make landowners more responsible for what they are creating. And I know also, you know, we get a problem whereby we get £40,000 paid by a quarry to have the road done, where the road is constantly being, you know, destroyed. And yet it's still not being done, and we wonder why. And the other point about all of that is that when we think about the Pothole Pro, why can't that be used? And does it, or does it not, give you permanent repairs or just temporary repairs? Because temporary repairs, they just, well, let's face it, they're not the thing to do.
I'd say again, we'll share these questions out. In terms of sort of Cat 3s, the authority simply doesn't have enough money to repair all of the Cat 3s. But part of the work that was done this year to focus in on members' priorities, quite a lot of those were Cat 3s. I mean, I think every single pothole I put forward in my division through that scheme were those long-standing Cat 3s that people are frustrated with, and that's been the case for many members. We would like to do more. It's a simple case of we simply don't have enough money to repair every single Cat 3 on the network. We have to categorise them because of the nature of it. So, you know, a category 1 is an emergency repair. We need to get out there quickly and get that fixed. So the reason you've got Cat 1, Cat 2 and Cat 3 is so you can prioritise the repair based on the risk it poses to road users. So there's a number of the questions that I think we'll share across the panel. In terms of the Pothole Pro, so, you know, we've got varying methods of repairing road defects, and it's very much horses for courses, so we'll deploy what we think is the best. The Pothole Pro is used in pre-patching, it's used in wholesale repairs, so it will be there to do sort of, when we say temporary, we don't mean short-term, we mean good repairs, but it's also used as part of the capital programme on rebuilding, so it can do all sorts that we need. It's not just for, you know, temporary repairs.
Yeah, the water issue's actually very complex, legally very complex, that, and it depends upon what was there first. So, for example, if the natural path of the water is from the land adjoining the highway onto the highway and then off the highway onto adjoining land, then the highway authority has limited powers to deal with that water or require the landowner to deal with that water. The highway authority has to deal with that water. It is a very complex issue where you kind of can't go one case fits all, because it definitely does not. There are some powers in the Highways Act where we can deal with, for example, mud being washed on the road. There are some powers in the Highways Act where we can deal in urban areas with water being discharged off buildings onto pavements. But the Highways Act only provides those powers where water's being washed off buildings onto pavements, rather than a kind of general power to deal with all landowners where water comes off their land onto the highway. Because often the highway intercepts the natural flow of the water. If you imagine you've got a highway going around a hillside and land above and land below, and naturally before the highway was built, the water would have flowed down that hillside, and you stick the highway in the middle of it, and the highway is intercepting that natural flow. And unfortunately, in many occasions, the highway authority has to deal with that. Now, we do come back to that kind of wider, that broader issue that was talked about earlier on about the way that land's managed. And we know that the way land manage is probably going to have to change because of climate change. And obviously there's the change since we came out of the EU in terms of the grants for farmland and the way farmland's managed. You can see that effect, can't you, quite clearly, where if a farmer ploughs a field and they plough the field with the furrows headed towards the gate and it's not yet been planted, you do get all that water and all that mud washed off through that gate onto the highway as a consequence of that. So there is something there about, you know, how do we work more with farmers? And we do a lot of that already with the flood risk team. How do we work more with farmers to encourage them to think differently, to adopt different land management styles to try and mitigate the impact of this? This time of year is particularly challenging, obviously, because the fields have been ploughed post-crops, and we do get a lot of those issues occurring. So there's something there we can probably take away. I know we've done it previously. We've done some work with the NFU. We'll kind of take that away again, and we can remind the NFU about managing the land to help us in the way that we manage our highway network. I think that was all. Was that all?
In terms of the issue you've got with the quarry, if you want to send us the details.
I'll pick that up. I know about it. Yeah.
Philip?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's the same old thing. A good presentation, but it's inconsistency across the county. In your toxicity. The good news, I never get any praise for that. The bad news, my inbox is full every day. So, Carter Street, Utoxeter. It's in a dreadful state. I took the member round and showed him it. He sees it every day. I asked if that could be put on the priority work to get done. The road was going to be closed in August for a week to get work done. I was out of the country on holiday. I come back, it wasn't done. So communication-wise, the communication telling the public it was going to be done was brilliant. The boards were out weeks in advance telling them the dates it was going to be closed. But nobody told me why it had been cancelled and why it hadn't been there. Now I'm having emails constantly from the borough councillors asking about why hasn't it been done. I've got to go to a town forum meeting tonight, and I know that I'm going to be asked to explain, you know, why it wasn't done and when's it going to get done. So I have actually emailed James to see if he can help me on that one. The work is inconsistent as well. We had the Pothole Pro out in Uttoxeter, fantastic. Up Bramshall Road, the place where, you know, JCB started, a very good publicity, right? They did half the job. They didn't finish all the job. And what they did do was like a rumble strip, so we had to get people to come out and have a look at it again. But it's a fantastic bit of work. The actual pro is great when it digs it out. It was the laying of the tarmac on the top that didn't work. But then we go to Oldfields Road, a fantastic job. It really is good. They've mended all the humps that were there. They've lessened some things, and it really is good. And in Stafford Road again, you know, you could see where the white paint had gone round, and they've really done a good job, big patching marks, but they've only done half a job again, so they're going to have to come back in December and do that. So will it get done if we're saying that we're not doing work later in the year? And it's just inconsistency. And grass cutting, we need to look at the quality of the grass cutting in the county, I think, because a lot of it looks like it's just been cut with a bread knife. It would look really, really poor. And so I keep getting complaints about it. It was cut, but it didn't look very good. It was not well at all. So it's just inconsistency in this. So if we're going out and inspecting our roads, surely if Carter Street is inspected regularly, they must know it's the poor state it's in, and it's getting worse, and the more rain we get, the more the road gets tuned up. You know, it's a high priority. It's right smack in the middle of the town. It's seen by all the residents regularly, and we have nothing but moans. So can we please look at the consistency of a work when it's inspected? You know, there's lots of good stuff. And then you talk to pothole-wise, we still have one or two, you know, but it's just the main roads, this main road that needs looking at, you know, and I think I get left behind because my roads are in quite a good state, really, because I'm constantly on it. I'm so passionate about our roads in Uttoxeter. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously you've talked to me about Carter Street already, and I did come and see it, and it was on the road to, and it hasn't been done, and we're waiting for an answer in terms of why that was the case and when it will be done. So that will be going forward. In terms of the general repairs in Uttoxeter, I think there was quite a lot of praise for that at the beginning from yourself and others as well, and I think some of the work it hasn't been necessarily completed. If it's pre-patching work for surface dressing, they can do that a year apart. So a lot of the time they do the pre-patching and then the surface dressing following up. I'm sure the officers might have a word to say about that. In terms of grass cutting, there's an awful lot of issues that are around that. We've been asked to try and reduce the number of cuts for the environmental benefits that might be occurring. And a result of that has been that the grass was a lot longer when it first got cut, or it rained in between cuts, so therefore the grass grew a lot longer than it would have done normally because you would have had more regular cutting. And we're trying to look at that as well. Again, that is something that has been brought up at members' meetings, and a lot of the time it's because the grass goes onto the road rather than being cleaned back. So again, that's something we're taking on board. And in the rural areas, what we'll be doing from now on is we'll be just cutting roughly about 1.5 metres at the side of the road. We will not be cutting right the way up to the hedges, which is what we've done before. Many of you would have seen that, and again, that's to allow those environmental benefits from us just cutting the edges of the grass to make sure that the highway stays clear. So I think I've answered some of your questions there. Hopefully you'll make next week's meeting on Monday, and you can bring all these up. The officers will be at those meetings, the grass cutting person, the maintenance guys, the network team, and everyone else will all be there. So please come along with your questions. They will do short presentations at the beginning of the meeting, and then you have questions throughout the meeting. They last about 1.5 hours, and most of the members that have attended those meetings by teams have been finding them very useful. Thank you.
Ross?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back to the bit of the presentation on AI, something I think is very, very interesting. It's got enormous potential there. And I'm just wondering whether or not, as a county council, we are talking to our district and borough colleagues regarding the possibility of fitting this technology or utilising this technology in the refuse collection system, which must pretty much cover our network on a weekly basis. And in terms of collecting data and having that live information, you know, if you've got week on week on week analysis of a road, you can spot areas that are deteriorating over a period of time potentially. I just think in terms of programme management and efficient use of resources, rather than us having to have our guys getting out and doing it, if we've got this constant surveying of our entire network through the refuse collection system, it feels to me like it's a no-brainer that we should be working together on this. And is it something that we have looked at? And if not, can we? Thank you.
The answer is it's on our radar. We'd flagged it up as a possibility. We just want to make sure we're happy with what it's telling us now. It's kind of that balance of almost data overload as well. We want to be confident with the way we're using the data, and I say the big part of it is getting that system now set up in the background that's going to do that hotspot work for us. Otherwise it just becomes, yes, it becomes fantastic data, but if we haven't got that set up, it becomes too much for us to kind of analyse. So the key now is to get that back office system, as I describe it, set up. But yeah, absolutely on our radar. I think I kind of flagged that up maybe at Scrutiny about 6 to 12 months ago and said that would be one of the options that we would be looking at. So absolutely, yeah, it's still on the radar.
Just a very quick note, myself, Rob and Mark, we're still going out, we're still looking at the control room arrangements and how they analyse all the information that comes through the control room. And then in the control room, they bring in all the information from all these other teams to then, and what we've already said from David is to make sure that we try and utilise road closures as best we can and all the rest of it. So that's the minor thing. We're still finding out about that at the moment as a team. And I know that we've got work to go into. So that's a transformation element of what we've seen here. And it's something that we will be doing. It's been delayed slightly but because of the concentration on the recovery programme. But that's something that we are looking at in more detail. Okay.
Graham?
Very quickly, I think the refuse truck is a really good idea. I'd like to nominate Newcastle as a pilot project for that. Thank you.
I think it'll be coming to Tamworth before it gets to Newcastle. I think everybody's picked up on the points that I was going to make. I just want to, David, before we roll out the new customer service model, I think we need to be taken through that process to understand it. At the moment, I understand it's a little bit clunky for somebody that doesn't do it all the time. We do it all the time, so we know which buttons to press and which photographs match what. So I think before we roll it out to Joe Public, I think we need to understand that better ourselves. With regard to AI, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about, but I think I'd like to perhaps sit in one of the trucks or the cars and just see how it picks up that data, to have that total understanding of how it picks up data and how the data is used. So I don't know whether that can be arranged. Just to finish up, really, I think the report is a brilliant report, and yes, it's the 7th time we've had this here, but the data keeps on coming and coming, and I really want to say thank you to the team that are behind this, Darryl and James and David and Rob and Keith, that have picked up all this recently. It's a report that's easy to understand. It's a report that can easily be monitored, and going forward, it's gonna lead us where we want to be. So I'm really pleased about that. So if there's no further comments or questions from members, we have got the 2 recommendations. One is to receive the update on the progress and what's happened and how we're going to move forward for B. I think we've done that to death. And I thank the gentleman that presented us the report. It was a long report, but it needed to be done. And I thank the members for the questioning and the comments that have been made, because we know where we're going from now on in. So thank you, gentlemen. You're free to leave. Rob was like that then. Can I go? Can I go? And we'll move on to the next item, which is our work programme. Recently, we held the triangulation meeting, and we discussed future for items for inclusion. The waste infrastructure is going to be coming early 2025, possibly March. The library's investment in the library service, that's going to be post-May elections. The annual report for Staffordshire, part of the joint archives, we're possibly looking at January for that. And the 6-month update on the History Centre, again, is scheduled for February, maybe March. And also to invite National Highways to share an update on their major projects that they've got going on, because a lot of the time it's down to them that the road network fails. And then we've got, oh, yes, Peter's Civil Parking Enforcement Executive Response Update. Over to you. He does get to speak occasionally.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, following the meeting on the 23rd of July, the report and recommendations were given to the Cabinet Member for Strategic Highways, and I'm pleased to announce that all 7 recommendations were accepted. Looking at the work programme, you'll see it's attached there with more detail about the Cabinet Members' views. Thank you.
And just on that, I want to say thank you to Peter for taking that project up. Thank you for the team, again, Daryl's team that you've worked with, and Lee's team with civil pocket enforcement. It's a brilliant piece of work, and one that we should be proud of. Just what, you want to speak again?
Yeah, could I ask, thank all the members on the committee for their hard work and input, and the members of the working group, and former members like Councillor Thompson, who's no longer on the committee, for the feedback that she gave. And a big thanks to Deb as well for compiling everything for me. Thank you.
The date of the next meeting is Thursday the 24th of October at 10 AM here, same place, and we haven't got anything to exclude the public for. There isn't any public here anyway, so I'll close today's meeting at 11:41, and thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, Chairman.